G'day, Dart Taggers, and welcome to Convo with the Creator. I'm your host, Jim, and today I'm joined by influencer, modder, builder, and all-round awesome guy, Andrew G. How you doing today, mate?
G'day, Jim. It's great to be here.
Excellent. How's the weather where you are at the moment?
I'm in Brisbane, so it's a cool start to a late June morning. It's a little chilly, but the sun's up and it's going to warm up later.
Excellent. I'm glad because it is absolutely freezing in my shed, so let's crack on. For those who don't know, Andrew is an Australian YouTuber whose channel covers reviews, mods, and gameplay footage. Now, how long have you been in the hobby and what made you first get into it?
So I got into the hobby as, wait for it, a 40-year-old 3 years ago. So I'm a dad. My kids were little. They would be given Nerf blasters for Christmas presents, birthday presents, and so on. And I remember it was a modulus that broke, and moduluses, they were like $80 in the shops. And as a thrifty father, I was upset that an expensive toy would break, and I thought surely there's a way to fix this. Cracked it open, saw, yep, it's a pretty basic electrical circuit, and went looking online for replacement motors. And I came across Blaster Tech. So I got chatting with Dean, and he obviously sold me replacement parts, guided me through what I need to do to fix the blaster, and told me about the local group, the Brisbane Area Nerf Group, holding events, one of which was coming up that very Saturday, and suggested I come along. And I thought, well, that sounds like a stupid thing to do. But my but my son was interested, so I took him and a mate along and had a great time.
Excellent.
First event, I definitely felt like target practice for everyone else with a very slightly upgraded modulus. Certainly felt like target practice, cannon fodder. And so when my son said, we've got to go back every time, I thought, well, okay, we're going to compete. If we're going to go back, we'll compete. So that's when I started bothering Dean at Blaster Tech in earnest. Tried a lot of stupid things myself, but gradually worked out what works for me and what works for my family. And we've been regular fixtures ever since.
So you stole your son's modulus, to go to this event. What did your son end up using?
We picked up a Retaliator and a Delta Trooper on the way to the event as well.
Oh, nice.
And then actually,
so you had the modded blaster and you gave him the stock one.
Yes, but an on the field spring swap for the Retaliator. It was just like a 5.5 kilo spring, and was amazed at that power upgrade. So I used that for a bit, and just tried a few different things, which is actually something that anyone who asks me about, how do I get started? What should I do? First event, what should I buy? Especially, what blaster should I buy? What equipment should I buy? I always say, just grab something secondhand or borrow something. Go to a few events and find out what style of gameplay suits you. Because
good advice.
I didn't know.
You would hate for someone to go down the flywheel route when they hate it. They hate that play style.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't know what style of play I wanted. There was a few events before I worked out what I liked, and that was then when I stole my daughter's Generso blaster. That I got my first few tags at an event, and then I was hooked.
Good.
Then she wanted her Generso back, and so I rang up Dean again and messaged Dean again and got cracking.
Because you don't want the kids to have a better blaster than you. You always want to beat them. I mean,
well, I think as a father, it's important to instill these lessons in children that I'm still better than you.
Of course, until they get to 40 themselves, and they realize actually Dad was cheating.
Well, I don't think cheating. I mean, if an 8-year-old wants to learn how to solder, get a job and buy parts, they're welcome to. But if that level of capability doesn't kick in until the later teen years, then that's life. That's your job as a father to teach these things, I think.
It is. Very good point. Now, I've watched a fair amount of content on your channel, and it looks like your preferred primary of choice is anything HPA. What drew you to HPA in the first place? And HPA, for anyone that doesn't know, is high pressure air.
So yes, but also no. There's a few things to unpack there. My content, yeah, I do have a lot of HPA builds, but a fair amount of that is driven by the fact that there's a million Strife rewire videos.
That's correct. There are. Yeah.
There's heaps of spring upgrade videos. So for me, it was like, what isn't there much content of? What is there that I know that I can show that is new and different and interesting for people to watch? And you're never going to please everybody. I'll never get a million viewers making HPA Nerf blasters, but it's something that I know well enough, and I can demonstrate what I've done, how I've done it, why I've done it, well enough to make hopefully interesting enough content for people who do find that interesting. So yes, your your sample is biased. I just haven't. I've got Springer videos, I've got flywheel videos, but there's not a whole lot that I can do there that is going to be new and interesting, or stuff that people haven't seen a million times before already. So that's the first part, or a preface to the answer. Second part is that what drew me, I guess, to HPA, probably just being in a group with guys like Spectre and Cobber and Spencer and Dean, and people with these, even when I got into the hobby, it was like the version 3, the red Specs BZs were just released.
Yep.
And so, yeah, there were like developmental versions around before then that people had in their blasters, but that's when, I guess, mass production probably kicked in, and certainly retail sales, and then obviously through the next year, Supercore came along. So it was like there's an availability for the technology. There was the guidance and the leadership in our local group, and be people who can demonstrate and can educate about that part of the hobby, and then being able to use it in the higher FPS events that we had. So through 2019, we ran Iron Rush through most of the year. And then this year into playing it at Gel Ball Fields. Being able to use that higher FPS for more intense gameplay is fun and interesting. It's at Superstock events, though we have had HBA blasters at Superstock events in the past. We're sort of pivoting towards a more, I guess, family friendly.
And they'd have to be dialed right down anyway, because
which is a good thing about HPA, because you make a cool blaster and use it at a range of different events just by adjusting your air pressure. But I have just as much fun at Superstock events running springers and flywheels at these events. So it's HPA is fun, interesting to make. Something I can share with the knowledge I've gained, mostly through others, especially Spectre, of course, in our local group, but also elsewhere. But I have fun making all sorts of different blasters.
Yep. So into making HPA gear, do you have any advice for just beginner modders that want to get in and build a HPA retaliator or something? Do you have any very basic advice to give them?
Watch my videos.
I'll include a link in the description for your channel and your videos.
So, I mean, with the Specs VZ and the Supercore, Spectre's made it really easy. It's not quite a drop-in kit. It's not quite drop-in technology, but it's relatively close. And the technology is certainly no more complicated than rewiring a flywheeler. Depending on how well you solder, I've probably burnt myself more often with I've definitely burnt myself more often with a soldering iron than I have hurt myself doing anything with HBA components. So it's like it's just a different way of modding. I'd say don't be scared of it. Don't be concerned. I mean, just be careful. Get good quality parts, good quality fittings. Don't try to get the cheapest part you can. Saving a couple of dollars for something that
Could
might
blow up
last.
in your face.
Yeah, so don't do it. Don't 3D print your components.
Yeah, don't 3D print anything to do with HPA.
No, so it except for your shells. Shells are fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's yeah. I mean, it's probably it's a more expensive style of modding, and the equipment if you're to invest in bottles and regulators and remote lines if you're going that way is it's an upfront cost. But these are components that will last you years and years, and can reuse them on like all of my remote line blasters run, of course, off the same bottle and reg
Yeah.
and line. So it's yeah, I mean, getting started in HPA and building one blaster with all the parts that you need to get that going is a relatively high upfront cost. Once you get stuck in and then build your second, third, fourth, fifth
Yeah,
blaster,
yeah, yeah.
then that cost gets defrayed. It gets spread out.
Do you think that HPA is the pinnacle of our hobby because of the accuracy, how fast you can throw darts around down range? Do you think it's like the best of the best?
No, I think our hobby is too broad. It's not too broad. It's so broad that there are so many things that you could consider the pinnacle. Like I see people doing cosmetic mods, paint jobs, props, and it's I'm not artistic at all, and I see these paint jobs, and I'm like, I could never do that. That's to me takes more skill and patience and investment in time, largely, than anything I could ever do. So other parts of the hobby beyond the FPS and the rate of fire, I see as I see that as more complicated and yeah, more of a pinnacle, if you want to say, than just as I say, flinging foam hard and fast. Having said that, if you are looking at competitive gameplay where rate of fire and FPS is what you're after, then of course HPA has advantages over springers with a higher rate of fire, and advantages over flywheels with better accuracy. So it's I certainly enjoy when we have our high FPS events and there's 6 or 8 guys on the field running supercores. It's going to be a really exciting game.
Yeah. So I've noticed in your channel that you have featured quite a few Iron Rush matches where you run your amazing HPA setups. Would you like to see more competitive Nerf matches and maybe an official Australian team to compete with the American guys?
That would be awesome. Hey, so through 2019 is when we had our, I guess that was our Iron Rush year. The next year, obviously, COVID hit. That hasn't, we haven't really had the opportunity to find another location that's suitable for Iron Rush play. The idea of a league play like you guys have had over in Perth, but involving teams from around the country or around the world, that's an awesome idea. That would be fantastic. But I mean, the reality is, it's a cheap hobby. We're not, if you had, sponsors, corporate sponsors is what you'd need to make this sort of thing a reality. Just given the cost, Australia of flying people between states, it's just a huge cost. And if you did have the corporate sponsorship, they would be expecting you to use stock Dart Zone blasters or stock Hasbro blasters.
It depends what type of sponsorships you're referring to. Say if Worker got involved, they wouldn't care what you use. Or say a third-party supplier like Out of Darts, or even a manufacturer like Fly with the World.
True, yes. But I don't know if there would be the capital in those
Yeah, yeah,
businesses to be
yeah.
able to support that level of competitive, organised game involving travel, either nationally or internationally. So I fear that's a pipe dream that we're just never going to see.
Well, fingers crossed. So if workers listening, throw some money at us.
Absolutely.
So you started your Iron Rush team. Can you give any tips or pointers to players that want to start out doing Iron Rush or competitive space, and how they can get involved, or especially in Queensland, and if they can, how do they start a team?
So we actually never properly had designated teams. It seemed like the year that we did have these games, it was sort of in a preparation phase of getting used to trying out the rule sets, whether adjusting things like dart limits, reloading, scavenging, and so on. So it was never at a point where we had designated teams with 4 or 5 or 6 players who would play together. There were people who had pre-existing teams from previous events, like NIC level events that had been played in previous years, who would group together and play together for a round or two at a time. But largely it was at that time 5 players down there, 5 players down there, and let's just go. So
It was more of
that
a
was,
pre-season trial type thing.
it was, and that was good because you mixed teams up. It's
Yep.
you didn't have cliques developing. You didn't have the best team that just beats everyone else. So it made for good and fun gameplay. But never got to the point of now here's a team, here's how you can form a team, and here's what you can do. So for players who are wanting to get into this, the best advice is just turn up.
Yep.
There's if there's one constant that I see talking to people in groups anywhere around the world, really, is that this is an incredibly inclusive hobby. It's anyone can turn up and you'll be welcomed. So to anyone who's watching who hasn't attended an event, what I'd say is just turn up, see what it's like, talk to some people,
make some new mates.
Exactly. And if you don't know what to say, ask someone what they've done to their blaster. And they will talk to you all day about what they've done to their blaster, even if you don't understand a word of it. You've made a new mate. So if anyone looking to get involved in the hobby, just turn up, see what it's like, find out what you can, and get stuck in.
Do you think your club will be looking towards going that more competitive team structure Iron Rush in the future, or are you going to stick as in just turn up and play type scenario?
So one of the things that's happened just recently that's sort of developed from because in Queensland, gel blasters are legal. There are gel fields in quite a few places around Brisbane. One of those, Urban Shootout at Rochedale on Brisbane South, we've held a number of what we're calling bush nerf events, which are the 300 FPS higher intensity gameplay using events like domination and uplink, as well as team deathmatch. So out of that has developed at that field, they've got a speed ball or speed QB field, which is pretty similar to the Iron Rush. It's, 5-a-side, a set layout of the field. It's fast gameplay, it's high intensity, it's quick, and there are lots of gel fields that have the same setup. So there's established leagues for gel ballers playing this format, and so we had we put a Nerf team into one of their training days at Urban Shootout just to see how it went, and learned a lot. It's obviously different styles of blasters, different style of play, and one that as Nerfers we'd never actually played that specific rule set. So that's something that I think is probably a more likely direction we'll move is engaging with gel fields that have these either competition days or just training days, and being able to turn up with a team of nerfers and play on a field, whether we'd have enough for a couple of teams and play nerf against nerf, or whether it's always foam against gel, is something that that numbers might dictate. But I think that at the moment, that might be a more likely outcome than being able to reestablish a foam only Iron Rush league style of play.
Yep. Well, speaking of gels, the West Australian Police have recently announced the ban of gel blasters in WA, which was a huge blow to the community over this side of the country. Looking at the gel ball laws that Queensland has in place, I believe that they've struck the right balance between keeping the public safe and letting people have fun. But they can still be hit by harsh penalties for misuse. What are your thoughts on the way? I'm not sure if you heard about the ban that's happened in WA, but what are your thoughts if you have heard about it?
Yes, I have. So I play gel as well. Relatively recently got into it, so I've got a few blasters. I played a few local fields. My concern has never been with the blasters themselves. It's the people who the way people use them in ways that are not intended. So, if you think it's cool and fun to carry around, an assault, what looks like an assault rifle to a member of the public, and you think it's cool to walk around in public with that, then you're the one with the problem, not the toy itself.
Yeah.
If you think it's cool to do drive-by shootings with your gas blowback pistol, like you're some kind of gangster, the problem is you, not the gel pistol itself. So yeah, I mean the Queensland laws, you could almost summarize them as don't be a dickhead laws.
Yep.
You use the toys as they're intended, private fields, out of sight of the public, use responsibly, use safely, happy days, everyone has fun. Having said that, I completely understand where police departments and politicians would be concerned, where despite having those don't be a dickhead laws, if people continue to use them, despite the fines for being a menace in public, or causing hundreds of police call-outs, or being used in crimes or threatening people, if that still occurred, despite sensible or reasonable regulation, then I completely support politicians passing laws to ban the hobby.
Of course.
It's if it's not your hobby, if the hobby by its nature having weapons that people are prone to misuse, and the existing laws can't control that, then I think it's inevitable that that bans will take effect. And yeah, it's hard for people who are running legitimate businesses, selling products, selling equipment, accessories, people who are running fields for a product that's legal that suddenly becomes illegal, or very difficult to access if you need firearms licenses, for example, in South Australia. But it's just one of those things of this is why we can't have nice things, and I think the understandable anger that or disappointment that people may have is better directed at those who have caused, those who have provoked the legislative response, than bloody politicians, bloody police ruining my fun. It's like, well, no, it's a hobby that, as a society, we've shown that people can't do it properly.
Yeah.
So
Queensland seems to have nailed that pretty well. You don't really hear many incidents of misuse of gels anymore in Queensland since they've
Well,
introduced these new laws. But not that I've seen anyway.
um, yeah, but I hadn't. I haven't seen that. When they updated these laws a little while ago, last year. There were press releases saying police were called out to so many hundred call outs in the past year or 2 years because of these products being used in public. If that were to continue despite the laws, even given that because all states have existing laws about you can't walk around with weapons in public. You can't shoot people with gel balls. You can't run up and punch someone. Causing assault is assault, whatever the. So
Yeah.
you don't need specific gel balls for a lot of these offences. So they were already on the books. If, despite those sanctions, there was still community harm existing, misuse of police resources or misallocation of police resources dealing with these events, then I think the hobby as a whole would have no one else to blame but collectively themselves, even if 95% of people remain blameless.
Yeah, that's a good point and a valid one. But do you see gel as a competitor to the dark tag space? Do you see them as taking players away, or do you see it as a way to introduce more players to the dark tag space through via gel?
You could look at it both ways. Because I've only been in the hobby for a few years, gel was sort of already established when I came to the group. There are players in our group who both fling foam and gel. There are players who probably attend more gel events now than they do foam events compared to what they previously did. I haven't seen. So when we first started playing at Urban Shootout, there was obviously interest from the gel players, especially some of those who took hits in sensitive areas. That oh wow, this is a serious hobby. This is they're both shooting sports, so and similar kind of gameplay, but different enough. But I don't know if we've picked up any new regular members who came to the Brisbane area Nerf group from the gel community specifically, who weren't already involved with Nerf in the first place. So it would be nice if that were to occur. But I just haven't seen any evidence of that. Though everyone's welcome. So
yeah, of course.
There's advantages to flinging foam in a public park with your family out in the open that you can't do with gel blasters. You can involve younger kids, people who aren't interested in the higher intensity gameplay, but you still want to get out of the house.
Or the mil sim element.
Yep. The mil sim. So there's definitely a space for the two hobbies to coexist. But like I said, I haven't seen any evidence of that. But happy to be proven wrong. Happy to see new players come to us from the gel hobby. Coexisting. I've really enjoyed our events, and I've got a few videos up with gameplay at Urban Shootout, where although they've been bang hosted events and the majority of players are using foam blasters, we have had and welcomed gel players as well, and the usual team balancing of a few here and a few there. So it's never been specifically Nerf versus gel for that style of gameplay. But it's the incorporation of the two types of blaster has made for interesting gameplay, using the advantages of range and accuracy from foam darts against rate of fire up close for the gel blasters. It's made for interesting gameplay. So I'm keen to see more of that as well.
Yeah, so would I. I mean, well, not over here anymore, unfortunately.
Well, no.
But I'd like to see some more on your channel. That'd be good. I'd like to see some, gels versus darts as the gameplay, because the one or two matches that I've played with gels versus darts is that darts wrecked at range. Like, we kept them back, but once they got in close, darts had no chance.
Yeah, I think that would be. I think that's inevitable.
Yeah. Speaking of videos, on your channel, you've showcased a number of your builds, your mod guides, and gameplay footage. What is a mod that's turned out much better than you thought it was going to happen?
So probably two come to mind. One is the Spexfire LPA. So Sledgefire with the Spex DZ.
That's the one behind you, right? That's the one behind
you?
Yep.
So that's this one. So having a singled for short darts, Spex DZ in here. So people have done that mod before. That's fine. The MTB guys years ago did one. Spectre did one years ago with the old XBZs. So that part was pre-existing. What I did was I grabbed a Xiaomi battery-powered mini compressor that I've got fixed into the stock here with these straps. So this is a battery-powered compressor which you can set for a specific PSI, and so that's what fills the air. So rather than remote line or bottle on, this is a self-contained air blaster that's not HPA. So you never have air that's greater than 15 or 30 or 40 PSI in the system as a whole, yet allows you to hit, so with different length barrels, this is fine for super stock events at 150 FPS. It's fine for bush nerf events at 300 FPS just by swapping the barrel out and bumping up the PSI.
Yep. I
didn't know if that was going to work. I'd never done an LPA build, let alone a fully incorporated one. It was sort of lucky that the size of the Sledgefire stock fit the compressor pretty well, so I was really happy with that. It's got a Schrader valve to BSP piece there, and all the rest is a typical MJVO3 valve. And I tried it and it worked, and I almost couldn't believe it. It was like, this is what I hoped would happen, and it did. And I put it over the Crony and was getting 200 FPS at 20 PSI, and I was like, man, Spectre knows what he's doing. with the Spex DZ, it's like really efficient, and I like the form factor. It takes a few seconds for the air to fill up, but loading a Sledgefire takes a few seconds anyway. Yeah. So it's I used it at our super stock event last week for a number of rounds, and found it quite fun to use. Challenging getting rushed by someone with a rapid strike while you're desperately trying to reload and repressurize the system. But that one turned out better than I'd hoped. The other one, and this is my most recent breakdown video for June, is what I call the Super Duper Prophecy. So this is a super core blaster. It was actually a pre-existing one. So this is a clear Prophecy shell that I've just tinted red. So it was a semi-auto remote line super core build, pretty standard. What I did was replace the manual MJVO3 valve with a solenoid that sits in the stock, and added a cheap pulse generator I got off eBay for a couple of bucks, to control, that's adjustable, and that controls the the pulse, the firing essentially.
Yep.
So I can set that to full automatic fire. So this can do 8 or 10 darts a second at 300 FPS.
Very impressive.
And again, that was something that I thought in theory that could work. I wanted to make something that was sort of simple enough for dummies like me to build without needing to program an Arduino or upload code. And I thought, oh, in theory, that seems like it should work. Can I get it to work?
Yeah.
And then it did work, and I was like, great. So that's probably the second one that turned out exactly as I'd hoped, but I wasn't really confident that it would, and I was very pleased when it did.
Awesome builds, very impressive builds, and
So,
I love that sledge fire. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's certainly fun. At our previous Bush Nerf event, I gave it to one of the guys who is a bit of a sledge fire expert, and of course he tagged me with it. So yeah, I got hit from right across the field with it, it's like a tear to my eye.
Yeah.
My boy's grown up.
So, how do you find the transition that's come about from builder to more hobby influencer?
I think influencer is maybe not the right word for me. I don't know who I've influenced.
I think you've influenced a lot of people with your builds and your mod guides and your gameplay footage. I mean, your content is getting a lot of views.
Again, I don't know if that's quite true. Everything I've done, everything I do, I can point to where and who in the hobby has influenced that. So I feel that I'm much more influenced. Okay, so maybe if there are people that I do influence, then that's good, but that's almost like, I feel like that's paying it forward. So,
Yep.
Obviously Spectre has taught me nearly everything I know about HPA. Dean at Blasted Tech, taught me nearly everything I know that I didn't figure out just by getting stuff wrong, about flywheels and Springer mods. Making gameplay footage, obviously huge influence from Bradley Phillips and Cobber. So it's like I feel much more influence from those guys. And so yeah, okay. So if people are influenced by what I've done, then that's cool. I guess that's nice to think of it that way. But it's like I don't like to think of myself as an influencer as far as that goes. I guess there's better people than me. There's more knowledgeable people. There's more experienced people than me that I think people could and should be influenced by, before they get to my stuff. But if they are, then I guess that's cool too.
That means you've done your job as a YouTuber and content creator, that you've helped somebody that.
Yeah, but it still feels to me like I'm passing on information and knowledge that came from others beforehand. Although I guess there are, okay, so with this, with those two mods, the Sledgefire and the Red Prophecy, I guess those are examples of there's tech or there's mods or there's existing work that I've done a little bit extra to build on.
Yeah.
Putting in the compressor and putting in the pulse generator. So I guess, okay, yeah, so it's, the saying standing on shoulders of giants. So, okay, well, that's something. So you've got, pre-existing knowledge and expertise, mods that are there available for anyone to look at, certainly that I've looked at and learnt from. And if there's a few extra bits that I can do that other people can take and, do the same or do new stuff, then yeah, that's pretty cool too. Agreed.
And that's all we can really hope for when we create content.
Well, that's how the hobby advances, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, if we didn't, we'll still be using 5 kilo springs and recons.
Yeah, but put it in the oven first.
Or the penny mod for the Maverick.
Yeah. See, all of this predated my time. when I got into the hobby, it's like work already had um, firewall cages, the OFP cages, the wheels,
Yeah.
um, the metal breech and barrel systems. So I only know all that earlier stuff from Legend and old
Yes,
YouTube
and
videos.
old YouTube videos. Well, you're not missing out on much. The old days certainly were dark days when it came to modding.
We're not going to talk about IMRs.
No, no, we're not. We're not. We're not going to say that I still have some in my hurricane just here.
Definitely not going to say that.
Not only are you a content creator, you're also one of the admins of the largest dart tag group in Queensland, the Brisbane Area Nerf Group, or BANG for short. How have you found your transition from more of a player with your kids attending matches to organising and hosting large scale events?
It's so it the transition was kind of interrupted. So I started 2018, 2019, it was like turn up every single event that I could, and I think I only missed one when I was interstate for work. Then getting into 2020 before COVID hit, existing admins and hosts like Cobber and Bell had indicated that they wished to step down. Life happens, things change, that's fine. And so Liam and Brenda wanted to bring new people in, and the saying, decisions are made by those that turn up. So I think just by being a regular, being present, being involved, willing to have a say about the direction of the group and what you can do to help. So that was sort of, I guess, behind those guys asking me to step in. So I've taken over hosting events for hosting duties for Superstock events, which again it's fun. It's work. That's for sure. Setting up, storing stuff, sorting darts, packing up at the end of the day, final dart sweep at the end of the day, sorting out events. It's work, but the fun the enjoyment I get from when things go well, when things go smoothly, when seeing the regular players, seeing the new players having fun and enjoying is great. And at Bang we've got a really good core of regular veteran players who everyone knows the setup, everyone knows the rules, and so it's not like everything falls onto the host on the day. Explain then everything. There's always people. When we split up the teams, there's always vets who are able to help guide and inform the newer players, the younger players, first-time attendees, which makes running the event easier, and it makes for a more fun and enjoyable event for everyone, I think.
So what type of events does your club hold?
So monthly Superstock is our public park 150 FPS events. The game types we play at these are things like Team Deathmatch, Uplink, Capture the Flag, Domination, sometimes a round of humans versus zombies or two. Kill Confirm. We have single shot rounds where everyone can only use single shot blasters, so no magazines, and that's always fun because it's like you can't use a rapid strike.
You can use your sledge fire.
You can use the sledge fire, and that's like a completely different kind of gameplay that you might use for every other game of the day, and suddenly it's doing things very different. So mixing things up, I guess, is always makes it fun. One of the games that we started at the end of last year, at the end of the year war, that sort of just came to me because the kids were very energetic at the end of the day and the adults were very tired. I said, let's just play kids versus adults.
Yep.
And so I said, all right, kids, unlimited lives, go down that end. Adults, one life. Goes down when you're tagged. And so some adults were like, well, I've had it. And they just go and get tagged. And, oh, no, I've got to sit down now.
Yeah.
but yeah, no, and the kids would just run and run and run and burn off their energy, which is great. And so we've repeated that one, and that's been a bit of fun. And yeah, the kids for some reason have always won. Adults haven't won yet.
Yeah, that's
But,
surprising with
it's
their unlimited
surprising.
lives.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
weird.
One of these days, though, I'm sure we'll break the streak, and adults will emerge triumphant.
Victorious. Yes.
One of these
Yes.
days, maybe. So yeah, okay. That's our super stock events monthly. Also monthly through this year has been our Bush Nerf events. So Liam and Brenda have been hosting those, and that's been played at Urban Shootout Gel Ball Field, as I say, at Rochedale on Brisbane South Side. And so that's like a semi-rural setting where Dapper, the field organizer, has. Well, you can see in the videos there's a range of different kinds of cover.
Yeah.
There's piles of barrels, there's tire stacks, there's scaffolding, there's forts set up, there's just trees and barriers, and that's a really varied, not quite a jungle setting, not quite an urban setting, sort of a mixture of a kind of a wastelandy feel, I guess. And that range of cover has made for some really interesting and really intense gameplay. So that's our 300 FPS limit Bush Nerf style of play, which is every month towards the end of the month. So that's sort of our two games, more or less every second week that we've got at the moment. And if Speed QB does take off, and we are able to play that style of game at other gel arenas, then maybe that's a third type that'll be available. But yeah, we're sort of still, I guess, feeling our way with gel field operators for those other styles. But certainly with Urban Shootout and Dapper Roadstar, that's a partnership that I think everyone really enjoys.
Yeah, good. Now, would you like to see club versus club matches?
Again, that would be awesome. But I just fear that the distance, the tyranny of distance, means it's just too impractical. Every now and then, people talk about, well, maybe Sydney and Brisbane could have an event,
close enough.
Drive to, I don't know, Byron Bay or Coffs Harbour or something, but the logistics and being able to find a time and a place that you can get enough people from both groups together. It would, sadly, it's just impractical to get enough people from Brisbane to go to a Sydney event, or enough people from Sydney to go to a Brisbane event. Occasionally there are people who do travel, who we do see from other states, which is always great. But I fear that's never going to happen, and certainly not while we're in the COVID era, subject to border shutdowns and lockdowns. Which actually I missed my opportunity to. It was in March 2020. I had booked flights and my sister's couch, and to borrow her car to fly to Sydney for a Sydney event in March, just at the start of COVID. And I had everything organized. I was going to get my bottle filled. I had almost had my bags packed, ready to go. And it was like the week before, and COVID was just taking off. And I thought, nah, I can't risk it. And so, cancelled that. And I was really, really looking forward to getting down to Sydney for an event at JBE in March 2020. And it's just never happened. I'm hoping to be able to do that at some stage. But I can't see anything reliable.
Can't see big events happening.
Yeah, interstate in the near future until we all get vaccinated.
Yep.
Even then, I think it'll be more likely the occasional player venturing interstate for a game rather than entire teams. So as cool as a road trip with 10 or 15 bangers would be. Yeah, again, that I fear is a bit of a pipe dream too.
So
Sadly.
worker, if you're listening to this, throw some money at us
Yes,
so we
yes.
can.
Pay everyone's wages for a week so that we
Yes,
can
yes.
take time off work. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much money worker has, but that'd be cool if they did want
That'd be very cool.
to throw money at Australian nurses.
Mate,
We'll
that's
put you on
about all
YouTube.
the questions I have for you today. Do you have anything else you wanted to raise or bring up?
Oh, oh, no, no,
No?
sorry. I've been talking about me and my reckons. Almighty, I haven't thought about yours.
Well, this convo's about you, not me.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I guess that's fair.
Well, in that case, we'll leave it here. Thanks everyone for watching this convo. I'll leave a link to everything, or the description so I'll leave a link in the description for Andrew's gear and the club, the Bang Club. And thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you on the field.
Thanks, guys.